The topic today is introducing ISTQB Agile Foundation, extending the ISTQB program's support further. Our presenter today is Rex Black. Rex is a popular presenter with 30 years of software and systems engineering experience. Rex, who is a CTAL full and CTEL-TM full, is president of RBCS, a leader in software, hardware, and systems testing. Rex is the most prolific author practicing in the field of software testing today. His popular first book, Managing the Testing Process, has sold over 50,000 copies around the world, including Japanese, Chinese, and Indian releases, and is now in its third edition. His 10 other books on testing have also sold tens of thousands of copies. Rex has written over 40 articles, presented hundreds of papers, workshops, and seminars, and has given approximately 50 keynotes and other speeches at conferences and events around the world. Rex is the past president of the International Software Testing Qualifications Board, ISTQB, and also of the American Software Testing Qualifications Board, ASTQB. It is my pleasure to now turn things over to Rex Black.
Thanks, Dave. Good morning or afternoon or evening to all of you, wherever you happen to be. Today, as Dave said, we will talk a little bit about the impending, imminent ISTQB Agile Foundation Extension Syllabus. Now, as some background, it's important to keep in mind that the ISTQB has always been supportive of different software development life cycles. So there's a discussion of sequential life cycles, incremental life cycles, and agile life cycles. And you'll find this in the foundation syllabus, the advanced syllabus, and the expert test manager syllabus. But we decided a couple years ago that we really needed more on how Agile affects testing at a foundation level. So what we decided to do was to build something which we ultimately determined we would call an extension. And it's a smaller, compact syllabus that, as the name says, extends the foundation to provide more detailed discussion of how the foundation concepts apply in an Agile project. It also looks at established Agile testing best practices, drawing on things that have been published and learned over the last 10 or so years as testing in an Agile context has become more important and more prevalent and better established. So in 2013, a group of us, which I was honored to be the chair of, worked. We had a number of on-site meetings at locations around the world, and we also did a lot of offline work, editing and so forth. We got the main text created in 2013. 2014 was all, early 2014 has all been about editing. So we got it all edited, and it has been put to a vote, and we expect the release of the syllabus shortly. So I'm going to go through what you can expect when that syllabus comes out, and give you a chance to react to some of the kinds of questions that you might see on an ISTQB Foundation Extension exam. Now here you see a graphical representation of the program with the foundation extensions added in. Let me see if I can spotlight here. So Dave, hopefully you see that I have the spotlight on Agile Tester right now. This is Citrix is cooperating. So here's the Agile Tester module nestled in there against the foundation. And we also have another one coming out planned for next year on model-based testing. So that one's very much in progress. Notice that this is not above the foundation. It is at a foundation level. So everything within this band, this dark blue band, is considered to be foundational material. So that's the the level that we're addressing in the Agile extension syllabus. It is not meant for people who are working at an advanced level necessarily. Now, of course, if you are advanced and you do want to get a Agile extension certification, you certainly can do that. But keep in mind that it's going to be at a foundation level. So, excuse me, there may subsequently be some additional extensions at an advanced level, but at this time, those are not finalized. So the material is at foundation level and extends the foundation concepts. Now, to create the syllabus, what we did was we first started off by saying, okay, let's think about what we would expect a person at a foundational kind of level to be able to do if they're working as a tester on an Agile project. So we spent a lot of time talking about this, as we knew that we needed to get these things right because everything would flow from these capabilities, which are, by the way, are referred to as business outcomes. So the business outcomes address what a person should be able to do, what the relevant outcomes are with respect to their day-to-day business capabilities. So the first has to do with being able to collaborate effectively as part of a team. Agile emphasizes teamwork, so testers should be able to collaborate, not expect to be off in a separate group, hermetically sealed from the rest of the Agile team, but rather working collaboratively with them. And in order to do this, you would need to understand the basic Agile principles and practices, because the terminology, if you will, and the way things are done is different in an Agile project than it would be in a sequential project. So to collaborate effectively, you have to speak the language, though it is more than terminology. It's also what goes on. Now, Agile testing is still testing. So any idea that, well, we're in Agile, so nothing that applies in testing other projects applies, that's incorrect. There's plenty of best practices and knowledge and techniques that can be applied and should be applied in an Agile context. They do need to be adapted. So, for example, risk-based testing is carried out a little differently in an Agile project, because instead of one risk analysis process at the front during the requirement specification phase, there is a risk analysis as part of iteration planning in each iteration. So we wanted people to be able to adapt techniques such as risk-based testing and black box test design and so forth into an Agile context. Now, at the foundation level, a lot of the focus is on the individual contributor, because for the most part, the entry-level tester in a traditional life cycle is going to be working as an individual contributor and not engaged very much in planning. However, in Agile, there is this concept of the self-directed and self-organizing team. So the tester, as part of the team, needs to be able to participate in planning. So planning of how long it's going to take to test based on things like risk analysis, planning for the environments that are needed, and so forth. So we want to make sure that people were ready for that. Figuring out how to take white box, black box, experience-based test design techniques, test execution techniques, and apply them. Something else we want testers, Agile testers, to be able to do. Participating in automation. Automation is a very important factor in Agile projects because of the increased regression risk associated with the change that goes on. So it's important that Agile testers be able to help with that. Now, we're not saying that an Agile tester is necessarily going to be a test automation expert at a foundation level. That's something that's likely to come at a higher level. But certainly our expectation is that Agile testers would be able to assist in this process. Now, one of the things that is very important for a tester in an Agile project to do is to be able to work with business stakeholders to make sure that user stories, which is the Agile version of a requirement specification, are understandable and testable, and they have clearly defined acceptance criteria that will allow the testers to determine whether the user story is, the code that implements the user story is actually working correctly. And again, testers are expected in an Agile environment to be able to collaborate, and part of that collaboration has to do with information sharing. So that's something that we want Agile testers to be able to do, is to report status. Again, in a traditional sequential lifecycle model, the test manager will be the one primarily responsible for doing the status reporting, but in an Agile team, the individual tester needs to be able to do that. Now, once we had the business outcomes defined, the next thing that we did was come up with the learning objectives, and that influenced the way the syllabus was structured, and I'll go through the learning objectives here shortly. But first is to the content of the syllabus. We wanted the material to be usable and useful to somebody even if they have no familiarity with Agile development and Agile testing at all. So the way the syllabus works is the first chapter on Agile software development is really to answer the question of, well, what is this Agile stuff anyway? You know, if a tester's about to be involved in an Agile project, then the first thing they need to understand is, well, what does it mean for a project to be Agile? What is Agile software development? What are the fundamental ideas? What things happen and don't happen on Agile projects? The next chapter addresses the question of, okay, so now I understand what Agile is in general. How does testing fit into that? What's the difference between testing in a traditional sequential lifecycle model or even a traditional iterative model like rational unified process versus testing on an Agile project? How do we report status? What's the status reporting mechanisms? Testers who are used to just going, oh, well, you know, I run my tests and I put my results in the quality center or rational test manager. Something happens to them, I don't know, they go off and people look at them and things happen. That's not going to work in an Agile setting. So people need to understand that this is how status is reported. And then what do the tester expect to do, and what skills should they have? So that's the second chapter. And then the third chapter is all the you know, as the cliche goes, the meat and potatoes. It's about, okay, so what specifically do I, as a tester, need to be able to do? What are the different methods that I need to be able to apply in testing? How do I do risk-based testing? How do I do test estimation? What are the different techniques that I'm going to be applying? And how can tools help me? So the structure is to start with the general, so as the cliche goes, the 10,000-foot view of Agile as a whole, get more specific and focused on testing within Agile, and then to get down to the point of saying, all right, and these are the things that you need to be able to do, to actually do as a tester on an Agile project. And you'll see when we go through the learning objectives that the focus really shifts more about recall and understanding at the beginning, just remembering things and understanding concepts, down to actual application of techniques by the time you get into Chapter 3. Now, I assume that most of you are familiar with the ISTQB program and have gone through some of the certifications. So you're probably familiar with this concept of learning objectives. And so the learning objectives are the specific things you need to know, and each has an associated knowledge level which explains the degree to which you have to know them or master them. So there are 3 levels in the Foundation Agile Extension Syllabus. First is K1, okay? So being able to remember things, to recognize something, to recall a definition, and so forth. That's the most basic level of knowledge that's covered. And then there's K2, being able to understand something, to compare something, to explain why something happens. K2 is more sophisticated than K1 in the sense that certainly you'd have to remember a concept to be able to understand it, but just because you remembered something does not mean that you understand it. Like, I remember that in college I took some mathematics courses, and there's some concept of matrix inversion. I remember going through a class on that and doing matrix inversions and matrix mathematics. I don't understand what those techniques are used for anymore. That's lost information to me. I didn't understand it very well when I was doing it either, to be honest with you. So yes, I remember that there is some concept of matrix mathematics, and I would be able to recognize the mathematical structure, representation of it. You know, if you put a matrix in front of me, I'd be, oh yeah, that's matrix mathematics. But what was going on, I don't understand. So K2 is higher than K1. And then K3 is actually being able to do something, be able to take a concept, a technique, and apply it to a given situation. Now, the K3 is higher than K2 in a similar kind of way. So I do remember and understand enough of my college physics to be able to explain how a musical instrument works. But I can't play a musical instrument, nor could I sit down and build one. So I have K2 understanding of the physics behind music, but no K3 knowledge. So hopefully that gives you a way of sort of differentiating between the different knowledge levels that you see. Obviously, K3 is the most sophisticated. Now, the exam structure, if you go to take the Agile Foundation Extension exam, it's both similar and different from the Foundation. So, what's similar? Well, there are 40 multiple choice questions. Again, they're all multiple choice, just like the Foundation. And the passing score is 65%. Same as the Foundation. Now, a little digression here. Sometimes people look at that and say, oh, well, how hard could it be? You know, 65% to pass. It's important to understand, and if you're called upon to be able to explain this to other people, that the passing score has absolutely nothing to do with the difficulty of the exam. Absolutely nothing. I've taken exams before where the passing score was 90%, and those exams were so trivial that it was laughable. That you literally have to be asleep to not pass the exam. I could construct an exam where the passing score was 20%, and it would be almost impossible for anyone to pass it. It all has to do with how difficult the individual questions are. And the questions can be made as difficult or as easy as you want through the difference between the right answer and the 3 other options that are offered. So if anybody says, oh, well, those ISTQB exams are really easy, you only need 65% to pass, all that really does is indicate that person's lack of understanding of how exam structures work and how exams are created. So just in case you hear that objection, I wanted to be forewarned on that. Now, here's the layout of the questions across the chapters, and you see it's pretty consistent in terms of the number of questions. You have 13 questions in Chapter 1, 12 questions in Chapter 2, and 15 questions in Chapter 3. So there's a slight emphasis on Chapter 3 from a question count perspective. But where things really get interesting is if you look at the K-level distribution of the questions. And this is where the important distinction between this and the regular foundation comes out. The regular foundation, 50% of the questions are K1 questions. Notice that here only 10 out of the 40, only 25% of the questions are K1 questions. So if you know somebody who says, oh, well, you know, I sailed through the foundation, it was really easy, all I had to do was memorize a lot of definitions, well, guess what? That approach will not work for the Agile extension, because only 25% of the points are going to be associated with basic recollection. About half of the points will be at a K2 level, which is significantly more than the foundation. The foundation, 35% of the questions are K2, and here you see that 22 of the questions, more than half, are K2 questions. And most significantly is the K3. There are 8 K3 questions, which would be 20% of the exam. Only 15% of the exam is K3 and the regular foundation, but the Agile extension is 20%. So the exam will be more challenging. Again, it is not an advanced level exam, so don't get confused by that, but it is going to be more challenging in the sense that there is less emphasis on memorization and more emphasis on understanding and more emphasis on being able to do things. Now, when will the exams be out? Very, very soon. The exams have actually were created as part of testing out the syllabus to make sure that the syllabus was examinable, and we went through multiple rounds of that, and we're happy to say that the syllabus and the learning objectives all were perfectly examinable, and so there should be exams available very soon once the syllabus comes out. All right, so now what I want to do is go through the specific learning objectives associated with each chapter, and after I cover those, I'm going to ask you to try your hand at a sample question. So you can actually get a preview of what's coming on the exam. So, Chapter 1, there are 2 sections in Chapter 1. Remember, what we're addressing in Chapter 1 is what is this Agile stuff anyway. So the first section is Fundamentals of Agile Software Development. So we want to go through the Agile Manifesto, which is sort of the central theme of across all Agile projects. That's just a K1 learning objective. We want to make sure that people understand the whole team approach because of the emphasis on collaboration. So why is that important? How's the whole team approach work? And how does the team benefit from the early and frequent feedback that's associated with having a tester embedded in the Agile team and working side by side with the other members of the Agile team right from the start? In other words, the moment of involvement for the tester is day 1 of the project, which is nice because a common complaint of testers on traditional life cycles is, well, we don't really get involved in the project until it's too late, and we really can't influence things like whether the requirements are testable. One of the nice things about Agile is you do get involved early and you can influence that. So the next section has to do with basic aspects of Agile approaches. Now, we decided to pick some examples. The examples we picked were Kanban, XP, and Scrum. There are a lot of different Agile methods and Agile approaches out there. At first, we thought we would try to survey all of them, and then that quickly became obvious that we'd be, a mile wide and an inch deep, basically, that nobody would take away any decent understanding. We felt that Scrum, XP, and Kanban were either directly or in some major variant widely enough used that those would be good examples to talk about. So we use those examples to explain the different software development approaches. And then we get into something that is very important from a test point of view, which is the collaborative work between developers, business representatives, or in Scrum product owners and testers to create good testable user stories. So here you see the first K3 of the learning objectives. Now, an important principle in Agile is continuous improvement, and the mechanism for that is the retrospective at the end of each iteration. So we want people to understand how to participate in that, how those work. Something else that's very important in Agile projects is continuous integration. That software, as it's being written, is being checked into a source code repository and subjected to testing. So I want people to understand how that works. And then we want the testers to understand that there's iteration planning, release planning, and what they do in each of those. Now, this is only a K1, but we're going to come back to this later, and there will be learning objectives associated with specific planning activities where the tester needs to have a higher level of knowledge. So with those learning objectives in mind, here's a sample exam question. I will give you a minute to go through this and write down your answer, and then we will discuss what you got. Give you another few seconds here. You're working on it. Okay. The answer is A. Hopefully a lot of you are out there going, yay, I got it right. If you didn't get it right, you want to ask a question, go ahead and submit one now, and Dave can forward that on to me. One of the questions that might come up is, hey, is this question going to be on the exam? Because everybody always asks about that. Well, no, this question specifically should not be on the exam because this is actually a question that I created. But it is representative of the kind of question and the level of difficulty that you can expect to see. It is a foundation level question. Dave, do we have any comments or discussion on the question? No questions? Okay, good. All right. So let's move on to Chapter 2. So remember, Chapter 2 is about going from, all right, so I understand this Agile stuff in general, but what does it mean for testing? So the first thing, obviously, that needs to be addressed is this issue of, well, I've done testing in sequential lifecycle models, or I've done testing in traditional iterative models like RUP or RAD. How is Agile going to be different? So we have a K2 there describing what the differences are, how things are different. We also then move on to talking about how the development and testing activities are closely integrated in Agile, how the walls that sometimes exist in organizations that can separate, and I don't mean physical walls, I mean organizational walls, can separate the work that the developers are doing and the work that the testers are doing. Those barriers are deliberately erased. Again, it's about collaboration. So how does the tester collaborate with the developer? And then an important topic too, which is, well, how do I preserve and maintain the appropriate independent tester mindset? It was covered at the foundation level in chapters 1 and chapter 5. How do I keep that role when I'm integrated into the team? So we want to make sure that people understand that and understand some of the different ways that the organization itself might use different kinds of management structures to preserve that independence. Next, we want testers to understand how to communicate test status. Again, if testers are used to just sitting around and, okay, well, I run my tests and then I go into Quality Center or Rational Test Manager, Team Foundation Server, or whatever, and enter the status, update the status of the test cases and, enter my bug reports and so on. That's not the way that's going to work in Agile. People are going to be involved in daily communication, stand-up meetings, for example, updating of task boards, working closely with developers to help them solve bugs. So how are we communicating in terms of progress of testing and the quality of the product? And testing is very much a moving target during an Agile project because the change is a constant across the different iterations. Not only are new features being added, but existing features are being modified and bugs are being fixed. And so testers need to understand how to evolve their tests. And also how automation helps in terms of managing regression risks. And then we have a brief discussion, a brief section on the role and skills of a tester, making sure that they understand, okay, this is the skill, these are the skills you need to have, and in addition, above and beyond what's in the foundation, and this is the role that you can expect to play. Now, this is covered at a K2 level here. Remember, the next chapter, we're going to go down in more detail and say, well, and here are the specific things that you need to do. So that's what's covered in Chapter 2. And another sample question for you. I'll give you a minute to answer this. A few more seconds to work on it. If you're still staring at the screen, puzzled or not so puzzled. The answer is C. Hopefully most of you are yelling, yay, I got that one right too. Now, there will be another question, another sample question that we'll get to in just a minute, chapter 3. So for those of you who got 2 out of the 3 questions right so far, you might be saying, hey, that's 66%. Am I certified? Well, no, I'm afraid not. These are just example questions. Okay, so let's look at chapter 3. Chapter 3, as I said, is the meat and potatoes. This is where the doing is really emphasized, the ability to do things. So there's the first section, Agile testing methods. We did an overview of 3 important concepts that you're going to encounter in an Agile project: test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, and behavior-driven development. So we want people to be able to remember that. Now, you might go, well, gee, that's only a K1. Yeah, but hold on, because we're going to follow up with a K3 here in a minute about actually doing something related to these concepts. The test pyramid, testing quadrants, how those relate to test levels and test types. This will help you take your foundation knowledge that was discussed in chapters 1 and 2 and really put that into the context of the Agile project. And when I say chapters 1 and 2 here, I'm referring to chapters 1 and 2 of the foundation syllabus, not the Agile extension. And then in chapter 3, we decided we wanted people to have some K3 knowledge application, and we said, well, we're going to need to pick a model to do that within, and we picked Scrum. There was some controversy about that, but Scrum does seem to be the most widely used. Certainly in my work as a consultant, I see more Agile teams organized using some variation of Scrum than any other approach. So certainly it's usually Scrum with some amount of XP mixed into it. And the next section has to do with quality risks and estimation. So how do you do risk-based testing? Notice this is a do, K3. And how do we estimate based on the quality risks and the content of the iteration? So those are both K3s. Then we get into techniques. So the old theory in traditional projects, which almost never held, but it was the theory, was that a complete and more or less stable, unchanging set of requirements would be delivered to the tester at the beginning of the project, and the tester could rely on those as his or her test basis and also his or her test oracle, and that the requirement specification would answer all questions about what should be tested and what the correct behavior was. Now, of course, that never actually happened. I've never worked on a project where that has happened. Agile sort of just recognizes that reality is that, you know, whether it's possible or not, people just aren't very good at creating unambiguous, unchanging text and graphical explanations of what we're building and how it should work. So a tester needs to be able to ferret out, find, obtain relevant information. So that's something we want testers to be able to do. They should be able to work with the business stakeholders to define testable acceptance criteria. This relates back to the user story K3 in chapter 1 of the Agile Foundation syllabus. Now here's the acceptance test-driven development K3 learning objective, building on the K1 learning objective earlier, so be able to actually create such a test. Be able to apply black box test design techniques as explained in the foundation syllabus based on a user story, and be able to carry out exploratory testing. So a number of K3s right there. And then finally a brief discussion of tools, focusing on the tools that are more prevalent in an Agile world as compared to a traditional world. Of course, this doesn't replace the discussion on tools in the foundation syllabus. It complements it. So another question here. sample question for you. Give you a few seconds for this one. A minute maybe. All right, answer is C. Notice that this is the same as the answer in a traditional life cycle, right? That we use risk to determine how much testing to do. And this is true in a number of cases of Agile, that the basic idea of testing, it's the same basic ideas apply. It's just a matter of adaptation of how you apply them. Okay, so that's an overview of the syllabus. Now, is this appropriate for you? So who do we write this for? I said that we had a vision in mind as we were writing this of what people should do and what they should learn, and we also had a vision in mind of who this person is. So testers who had experience, possibly extensive experience, but only in traditional software development life cycles. So that's the how do I translate over everything I know about testing into Agile. We also wanted to cater to the testers who were just entering the field of testing and expect to be involved in or are going to be involved in Agile projects. And we also wanted to make this relevant to developers who are looking to gain a better understanding of testing in an Agile project, because after all, not only do we as testers collaborate with the developers, but the developers collaborate with us. The Foundation certificate is a prerequisite for the Agile extension certification at this time. So people will need to know the content of the Foundation syllabus and have passed the Foundation exam. Anything which is examinable at the Foundation level is also examinable at the extension level. So you need to be aware of that, is that you can have questions that draw upon Foundation knowledge, for example, with respect to test design techniques. So you certainly want to review the Foundation syllabus if it's been a while since you got your certification. Now, how do you prep for the exam? Well, unlike some other certifications, with the ISTQB program, training is always optional. You do not have to take training. The ISTQB program is not about forcing people to take training courses, but training is available. We'd expect to have a very significant number of training providers participating in this. Certainly as the chair of the syllabus working group, I've been contacted by a number of the national boards about questions relevant to training courseware preparation. So you should have a lot of options there. What are you going to see in terms of training? 2-day minimum. The course has to be 2 days. That's a requirement in the overview. K3 learning objectives. The 8 K3 learning objectives that we saw, you will have to have not only a explanation of the learning objective, but also a real-world example. And by real-world, I mean not like Lego toys or something like that, but an actual computer-based example of the learning objective in action, and an exercise. And for live courses, those exercises have to be solved in class and the solution discussed. K2 learning objectives, there will be lecture and examples, again, real-world examples. For the K1 learning objectives, it's just explanation. So I would expect over the second half of 2014 that there will be a number of books and training courses and e-learning and so forth that will be coming out. For example, I know that one of the authors of the syllabus, Thilo Linz, recently published a book on Agile testing, and it's, while not structured exactly the same as the syllabus, covers many of the concepts. So you'll have lots of options to prep for the exam, as always, as is the case of the foundation and the advanced levels. So we on the working group that created the Agile Foundation Extension Syllabus are proud of our work. We feel that it's done a good job extending the coverage of Agile concepts at the foundation level. As you saw, there are 3 chapters, 27 learning objectives, so it's tight and it's focused. You can expect that you will be examined on all 27 of those learning objectives in the exam. In some cases, you'll have multiple questions on one learning objective. Continuity and transfer of best practices from traditional types of projects to Agile testing is something that we wanted to emphasize. Just because the terms are new doesn't mean that testing in an Agile project doesn't involve all of the best practices that you're familiar with from your experience on traditional life cycles. As you saw, the exam is similar in structure to the foundation, but it is more weighted towards the K2 and K3 stuff. So expect the exam to be tougher in a way, more challenging. As I mentioned, certainly there are a raft of training courses that are coming online, and as the syllabus comes out, I would expect that those will be accredited fairly quickly, and that the ISTQB's exam will be will follow shortly afterwards. Okay, so at this point, I will hand it back to Dave to coordinate a question and answer period. Dave, you
yeah, I have a hopefully a simple question to start you out. Someone asked, they say, I'm just curious, how will the new extension be indicated? Will it be, for example, CTFL plus A or something similar?
It will be CTFL-AT for Agile Tester. So that's the acronym that you'll be able to put on your resume, business card, etc. Once you get this certification.
Great. Second question, is there a way of knowing what should be Agile tested as opposed to using a traditional method?
That's a good question, and that's something that I would expect that we would address if we do an extension at the advanced test manager level, because that's a question of that's basically a K4 learning objective of being able to analyze the properties of a project and select the appropriate life cycle for it. So there are learning objectives similar to that already exist at the advanced level, advanced test manager level, but they're not necessarily focused so much on life cycle factors. So if we do construct a extension for the advanced test manager, an Agile extension, then that's exactly the kind of issue that I would expect us to address. At the foundation level, we're assuming that the life cycle is a given. So the tester is going to come in and be told, all right, you are going to be working on this project, and this project is following an Agile life cycle. And so what the tester needs to do is understand what that means, what Agile means, what it means to be an Agile tester, and then finally how to carry out their duties as an Agile tester in that context.
Okay, good. A couple of people have asked, is there a specific date on which the syllabus will be out, and when it is out, where can they find it?
I would expect that the syllabus will be out this week. And the reason I say that is because there was a vote that was conducted over a 3-week period, and voting closed last Friday. So I would expect that at this point, what's happening is that there's a tabulation of the votes and a creation of the packet that's going to be distributed to the different national boards. So I'm thinking that the syllabus will be out this week. That would be my guess, latest next week. When the syllabus is out, the syllabus and its supporting materials, those supporting materials being the accreditation guidelines, the overview, the sample exam, the exam structure, and so forth, will be posted on the ASTQB website as well as the ISTQB website. Now, in case you're wondering why I'm so confident that the vote is going to be yes to release, it's because the vote for the beta release that happened back in February, March, something like that, was unanimous. While we did get a lot of comments, and I think we got something on the order of 2,000 comments, we processed all those comments, made a number of changes to incorporate those comments over the course of 4 rounds of reviews. And while the comments were, important, they were mostly course correction. In general, the syllabus has been received very, very positively throughout all of the stages of the review. So I'm very confident that the vote is going to be positive and that the syllabus will be out, as I said, probably at the end of this week, maybe next week, worst case.
Okay. Do we know the approximate cost of the exam at this point?
Oh, crud.
And if the answer is no, that's fine. I'm sure
Well,
that
we
information will also be on the ASTQB website.
We do, and I'm afraid I'm stumped by this. I should remember this because I was in the meetings where we discussed it. I believe it is either $250 or $200. So it's either the same as the foundation or a little bit less. That's certainly something that will be clarified once the syllabus is formally released, that there will be information about the cost of the exam. Because, of course, immediately people will be asking questions like that, like, when can I take the exam and how much will it cost me?
Right. And I'm pretty sure there are already some plans to get that information up on the ASTQB website. So we should be in good shape. And a similar question, where can we find the list of training providers?
So the accreditation process will start, as I understand it, shortly after the release of the syllabus. The syllabus package that was voted on does contain accreditation guidelines. As training courses are accredited, I would expect that information will be added to the ASTQB accredited training provider page. So there will be an additional column that will be added, I would expect. Dave, you're the web dudes. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but
no,
I would
you're
expect
correct.
there'll be that column that will have a check mark in it if one of the accredited training providers has that course in particular. And I would expect that most, if not all, of the current training providers will choose to offer accredited training against the foundation extension syllabus. And the reason I say that is because one of the drivers for creating the foundation and extension syllabus was the marketing working group, the ISTQB marketing working group, did a survey and asked people who already were certified around the world what they were interested in seeing from us next, and it's tremendous. Something like 70% of the respondents or 60% of the respondents said that they wanted to see Agile. And so if you figure, there's 300,000 plus certificates that have been issued, 70% of that's 200,000. That's a pretty big market for this exam. So I'd expect that the training providers will be quick to get on top of it.
Similarly, Rex, is there a list of books, or do you expect any books to be available for the Agile extension?
Well, the first book to come out that addresses the topic is Thilo Linz's book, as I mentioned. Though it's not 100% aligned structurally, and probably not content-wise. I haven't read it yet, but I would expect its content isn't 100% aligned with the syllabus. There is in the syllabus a bibliography of books that we drew on, books and other materials that we drew on, and so those would be books that we would recommend. So, for example, Lisa Crispin's book on Agile testing is one that's a prominent reference there, and a fellow Ajik, I think his name is, that we relied on very much for the acceptance test driven development material. So there's going to be those references, and I would expect that probably within 6 to 12 months that there will be books published specifically covering the syllabus itself.
Okay, excellent. I have a question, a more specific question. Should the Agile tester be necessarily involved in code reviews while doing Agile testing?
Well, as was discussed at the foundation level, and is reiterated in the Agile syllabus, testers really should be involved in any reviews that they are competent to participate in. So if a tester knows how to program, I think it would be very appropriate and very helpful for them to participate in code reviews. However, if a tester doesn't know how to program, then there's really very little that they can add to such a review, and not much that they're going to be able to learn from it. Now, I do think it would be very helpful to testers that are working in an Agile context, if they don't know how to program, to learn how to program, probably starting with some kind of scripting language, which would be helpful from a test automation point of view, but then ultimately graduating to knowing the programming language in which the application itself is being programmed. The expectation is that Agile testers are going to be more technically proficient than testers in traditional life cycles. So if you're aspiring to be a strong player as an Agile tester, and you're relatively weak in terms of your technical knowledge, I'd recommend that be the place that you start boning up.
Okay, that's helpful. I have a request, and if it may be simpler to refer them to the syllabus when it comes out if you don't have this at your fingertips. The request is if you could spell the name of the author that you first described, and if you know the book name specifically. Again, it's probably, as you noted, in the bibliography.
Here, I'll send the spelling. It's Lisa Crispin, Crispin, and Janet Gregory. And I'll send that to you via chat, Dave, and you can maybe forward that out to other people if you know how to do that. I'm not sure exactly how to forward it on, but yeah, that's I think a good book. They're now working. I talked to Janet in Sydney about a month ago, and they're working on a new book. I don't think it's a second edition. I think it's like the next level up. The only caution that I would give about that book is, and this is a very minor nit, that when they talk about black box testing, they don't really talk enough about traditional approaches, and they tend to kind of push one particular brand of exploratory testing, which I thought was an unfortunate bias. But again, this is a teeny nit. I mean, I'm talking about 3 pages out of an otherwise outstanding book. So I'd recommend that one as a good read.
Okay. Do you also on the TILO lens?
Yeah.
Do you know the spelling on that one?
Yeah, TILO LINZ. TILO lens. Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't remember the exact titles, and no, I'm not going to Google it for the person who's asking.
No worries.
Google it yourself, buddy.
Just probably one last question since we're running out of time here. How does, and this may be the a 14-minute answer, but I think you can answer maybe just briefly. But how does the ISTQB Agile certification, this extension, compare to competing Agile tester certifications?
Ah, great. Yeah. Okay, so there is an existing certification called CAT, Certified Agile Tester, and that certification, we looked at the content of it as part of what we were creating. That certification was basically created by a single individual who I know this person, and I know him to be quite competent, but still it's one man's opinion versus the much more collaborative, collegial approach that was used, where there were a dozen or so of us that worked directly on the creation of the foundation, Agile Foundation extension, and hundreds of reviewers, thousands of comments. So I think that we've sort of scooped up input more broadly. Also, with CAT, you are required to take training, and there is only a single source for that training. All of the courseware has to be run from this one company, and you have to have taken that particular training to take the exam. The exam comes from a single provider, so it's not open program like the ISTQB program. There's another certification out there, which is the IC Agile certification. The thing with the IC Agile certification is, again, the span of the people involved in developing it seems to be limited compared to what we did. Also, the IC Agile certification is more, the testing part of it is more sort of an afterthought, if you will, or an extension of the development certification. So in order to take the IC Agile tester certification, you have to have taken the IC Agile basic certification first, which is like a 3-day course. So you have to have, as a tester, gone through a lot of stuff that might or might not be directly relevant to you. And I don't think, for the IC Agile, as I understand it, there's only one provider available. I don't know if it's possible for other providers to become accredited or not. I don't know the answer to that. And as I understand it, there is not an exam. You have to go through the training. It's like the certified Scrum Master used to be prior to them having an exam. You had to take the course. So you're required to take training in order to get the certification. So again, it's not as flexible as the ISTQB program. Those are the two that I'm aware of. There might be other ones out there, but those are the two that I'm aware of. And we feel like, the authors of the syllabus, feel like that we have incorporated the best ideas that are out there about Agile based on our own experience as practitioners and consultants, as well as based on studying books and articles and other certification programs that are already out there. So we feel like we've really captured the best ideas.
Excellent. Yeah, the broad-based nature of the ISTQB Agile certification is impressive. So thanks to you and to the volunteers that helped to bring this out. We look forward to seeing the syllabus hopefully later on this week or early next week. I'd like to thank Rex Black on behalf of ASTQB. Please note that a recording of this webinar will be available. If you'd like to share it with your colleagues, it will be available on the ASTQB website in a few days. And also keep an eye out for information on upcoming webinars, which will take place continuing throughout this year and years to come. So with that, we want to, again, thank Rex and thank everyone for attending today.
Thanks, Dave.